Welcome to the deep dive. We've got some really great material here today, and we're going to unpack something, well, super valuable. Not just for maybe one specific exam you're thinking about, but honestly for how you listen day to day. We're doing a deep dive into mastering listening, specifically for the IELTS exam, using your guide as our map.
That's right. And, while IELTS is the focus, it's worth remembering these skills. They're pretty universal.
Absolutely.
So whether it's an exam or maybe understanding a complex presentation at work, or even just wanting to be a better communicator, sharpening your listening, it really pays off.
Couldn't agree more. So thinking about IELTS specifically, understanding the test itself seems like step one, right?
Definitely. The listening test, it's got 4 sections, and they get progressively harder.
Yep.
You'll find different question types, multiple choice, matching, maybe labeling a map or diagram, sentence completion, lots of variety.
And different accents too, I gather.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
A range of accents, which, keeps you on your toes. You really have to tune in.
So it's not just about knowing English words.
Not at all. It's about actively engaging with spoken English in different situations, academic, every day,
Yeah.
and all under the clock.
Right, the time pressure.
Exactly. So getting that high score, say a band 7.5 or above, it needs more than just good English. You're handling the time, the fact they paraphrase everything.
Meaning they won't use the exact words from the question in the audio?
Almost never. You have to recognize the meaning, just phrased differently. Plus, maintaining focus for, 30 minutes straight?
Yeah, that's demanding.
And understanding those different speeds and accents, it really tests your comprehension on, multiple levels.
Okay, so our mission today, using this guide, is to break down 5 essential listening skills. Skills for IELTS, yes, but also just for better listening overall. Where do we start?
Let's kick off with predictive listening.
Predictive listening, okay.
Think of it like activating what you already know. Your brain loves patterns, right? So if you look at the questions before the audio starts, you give your brain a head start. It becomes more receptive to the info it needs.
So you're anticipating what might come up based on the question itself.
Exactly. Based on context, keywords you spot in the question, common ways people talk about certain topics. It's about making an educated guess.
An informed guess, yeah. How can people practice that? Practically?
Well, the guide has some good tips. First, always read the questions before the audio plays. Really read them.
Okay.
Highlight keywords. Then try to guess, logically, what kind of answer fits. Is it a name, a number, a place, a reason why?
Right, what type of word?
Precisely. You can also practice with transcripts. Listen to a bit, pause, and then try to predict what the speaker might say next, based on the flow, the context.
That makes sense. The guide had an example, didn't it, about predicting someone's job?
Yeah, if the question's about occupation, you listen for phrases like works as a, or her job is,
Right.
or employed by.
Got it. Training your brain for those signal phrases.
Exactly. It primes you, makes you listen more actively from the get-go. Okay, skill number 2. Focused listening for detail.
Okay, so this is different from just getting the general idea.
Very different. This is zooming in. You're consciously listening for specific bits of information. Things like dates, prices, names, maybe the reason why something happened.
Sounds like it requires real concentration.
It does. And the guide suggests using IELTS sample tests for practice here. Before you listen, look at the question and figure out what type of detail you need. A time, a place, a person's name. Then as you listen, zero in on that. Jot down keywords related to it. Don't try to write everything.
Right, resist the urge to transcribe the whole thing.
Yes. Focus on what answers the question. And remember, that detail might be paraphrased, so vocabulary is important here too.
The guide's example was about booking an appointment, right? Listening for the time, the name, the service.
Precisely that. Filtering out the noise, locking onto the target info. Okay, skill 3. This one's huge for IELTS. Paraphrase recognition.
Ah, yes, because they don't just repeat the question words in the audio.
They really don't. The audio will almost always use different words, different phrasing, to express the same idea. That's paraphrasing.
And spotting that is key.
Absolutely fundamental. You need to connect the question's language to the audio's language, even when the words aren't identical.
Can you give a couple more examples? The guide had some good ones, like increase.
Sure. So increase in the question might become go up, or rise in the audio. Cancel might be call off. Improve could be make better or enhance.
Okay, different words, same core meaning.
Precisely.
So how do you get better at catching these, especially under pressure?
Practice. The guide suggests making your own paraphrase list, When you learn a new word, think about its synonyms. Actively build that list.
That's proactive.
Very. Also, watching English TV or movies with subtitles. Compare what you hear with how it's written. You'll see paraphrasing constantly.
Oh, that's a good tip. Matching spoken phrases to written ones.
Yeah. Or use vocabulary apps that focus on synonyms. It all builds that mental flexibility.
Makes sense. Okay, essential skill number 4.
Number 4 is note-taking and summarization. Being able to quickly jot down main points and key details while you're listening.
But isn't it easy to get bogged down trying to write too much and then miss the next bit?
That's the challenge. It's a common trap. The key is efficiency.
How?
Use shorthand, abbreviations. Don't write full sentences. The guide suggests practicing with things like TED Talks. Listen, then try to summarize the core ideas in just a few bullet points.
Okay, so practice summarizing longer talks.
Exactly. And critically, focus your notes on information that seems likely to answer a question. Keywords, names, numbers, don't just transcribe randomly.
Quality over quantity for notes.
Yeah.
Got it. And the 5th skill.
5th one is concentration and active engagement. Sounds simple, maybe, but it's tough.
Just staying focused for the whole 30 minutes.
Right. Keeping mentally alert, engaged with the audio, not letting your mind drift off.
Easier said than done sometimes. How do you train for that?
Well, the guide suggests listening to longer audio, like 30-minute podcasts, without subtitles. See how well you follow, and maybe pause every 5 minutes or so, and just quickly recap in your head what was said. It keeps you accountable.
Like checking in with yourself.
Exactly. And crucially, practice deep listening. When you're doing listening practice, just listen. No multitasking. Build that mental stamina.
Right. Makes sense. So those 5 skills together form a really solid framework. Now, the guide also talks about vocabulary and paraphrasing, the hidden key. Right. You touched on this, but why hidden key?
Well, because vocabulary underpins paraphrase recognition. You can't spot a paraphrase if you don't know the synonyms or related words.
Ah, I see.
A strong, wide vocabulary is the foundation. The more words you know, the easier it is to see those connections between the question and the audio. Even when they use different terms, it just unlocks everything.
And the guide points to specific vocabulary areas to focus on, doesn't it? Things that crop up often in IELTS.
It does. You'll definitely encounter numbers and dates. Lots of those. Also, words related to jobs, education, travel, directions, even science and research topics, especially in later sections.
So familiarizing yourself with terms in those areas helps.
A big advantage, yeah. You're just more prepared for what you might hear.
And there was that vocabulary table example. Could you share 1 or 2 from that again, just to illustrate the paraphrase link?
Sure. So, like the word approximately.
Okay.
In the audio, you might hear around or about. So the population is approximately 5,000. Means the same as around 5,000 or about 5,000.
Got it.
Or essential. That could be paraphrased as crucial or necessary. It is essential to arrive early becomes it's crucial or it's necessary.
Okay, yeah. Seeing those direct links is really helpful.
It builds awareness. One more. Assignment, often paraphrased as project or task. This assignment is due Monday means this project or this task.
Very clear. Now, the guide also mentions some more maybe advanced practice techniques to really level up listening skills.
Yes, a couple of good ones. One is called shadowing.
Shadowing.
Yeah, you listen to audio and you repeat what you hear almost immediately after the speaker. Like their shadow.
Huh. That sounds tricky.
It feels a bit weird at first.
Yeah.
But it's surprisingly effective.
How does it help listening specifically?
Several ways. It improves your own pronunciation and intonation because you're mimicking.
Right.
It also trains your brain to process English faster because you have to keep up. And maybe most importantly for listening tests, it forces you to pay really close attention to every word, even the small ones you might otherwise miss in fast speech. You catch more detail because you're trying to reproduce it.
Fascinating. Okay, what else?
Another one is gap fill practice using IELTS-style exercises.
Like fill in blanks.
Exactly. But the key is, these focus you on understanding the context to get the missing word, and they hammer home the need for correct spelling and grammar, both crucial for IELTS marks.
True. Spelling counts.
It really does. And finally, speed variation.
Listening faster.
Yeah, deliberately practicing with audio at slightly faster speeds. Start at normal speed, 1.0x, then try 1.25x, maybe even 1.5x sometimes.
Do that.
It gets your brain used to processing faster speech. So when you go back to the normal 1.0x speed in the actual test, it feels, well, easier, more manageable, less overwhelming.
Like training with heavier weights. Smart. Okay, so even with all this prep, people still make mistakes on the day. What are the common ones the guide flags, and how to avoid them?
Right. Mistakes happen. A big one, surprisingly basic, is ignoring the instructions.
Really? Like the word limit?
Exactly. Things like the word limit. It's so easy to miss. The instructions might say no more than one word, and you hear $500 and write that down.
That's 3 words. 0 marks. Ouch.
Painful, isn't it? So rule 1, read the instructions carefully every time. Take those few seconds.
Good advice. What else?
Losing focus. Mind wandering off during the 30 minutes. It happens. It is. So the guide suggests training your focus, like we said. Mindfulness can help some people, but definitely practice full-length tests in one go. Build that mental endurance.
Treat it like a marathon.
Pretty much. Then there are spelling errors.
Ah, yes. Even if you hear it right, you might spell it wrong.
Exactly. And that costs marks. So practice common, tricky words. The guide mentions accommodation, environment. Words like that which often trip people up. Make a list. Practice them.
Good idea. And distractors.
Yes. Confusing distractors. The audio often includes them deliberately.
Yeah.
Someone might say one thing, they correct themselves.
Like, let's meet at 4.
No way, actually 5 would be better. Exactly. You need to listen for the final answer, the correction.
So listen for changes, self-corrections.
Absolutely. Don't just grab the first number or name you hear. They're designed to check if you're really listening, not just keyword spotting.
Those are great practical tips. Now, the guide also had some mini dialogues, right, to show real-life examples.
It did, yeah. 2 short ones. The first is about booking a gym membership.
Okay, typical section 1 stuff.
Right. Someone asking about plans, monthly versus annual, the price difference.
Yeah.
And they use phrases like sign up, plan, price difference, and decide the annual plan is better in the long run. Common, everyday language.
Got it. And the second dialogue?
That one's a university group project scenario. More like section 3, maybe.
Academic setting.
Yeah. One student's checking on another's progress. The second student says they're swamped, really busy, but promises, no worries, they'll make sure it's done. Definitely.
So it shows those interaction phrases.
Exactly. How people manage tasks, reassure each other. Simple dialogues, but they reflect the kind of language you'll actually hear.
Helpful context. Okay, let's circle back to vocabulary one last time. The guide had a list of advanced listening vocabulary, too.
Yes. Words that tend to pop up more in the more complex parts of the test, sections 3 and 4 usually.
And knowing these helps with the higher scores.
Definitely. They often carry nuanced meanings, like ambiguous.
Meaning unclear.
Right. Unclear, or having more than one meaning. The instructions were ambiguous or inevitable.
Certain to happen.
Exactly. Certain, unavoidable. Failure was inevitable without preparation. Another one is emphasize.
To highlight something.
To highlight, to stress. The lecturer emphasized the importance of statistics.
Okay, maybe 1 or 2 more.
Sure. Allocate, meaning to distribute resources like time or money. We need to allocate more time to research.
Right.
And redundant, meaning unnecessary, usually because something's repeated. That extra paragraph was redundant. Knowing words like these just boosts your comprehension of complex arguments or discussions.
That's a great list to work on. So we've covered skills, techniques, vocabulary. Where can people find more practice materials? The guide listed resources, didn't it?
It did, yes. Some really good ones. For websites, it mentions IELTS Liz, very popular, lots of free stuff.
Heard that one?
The official IELTS website, of course, for authentic tests. And BBC Learning English, just excellent for general English listening practice. Loads of varied content.
Okay. And podcasts. People love podcasts.
Definitely. The guide recommends The English We Speak, also from the BBC, short episodes on idioms and phrases.
Useful.
Luke's English podcast, really engaging, covers lots of topics, great for general listening stamina. And for more academic-style practice, TED Talks Daily, perfect for Section 4 type listening.
Excellent. What about video? YouTube.
Yep, some good YouTube channels listed too. IELTS Advantage, E2 IELTS, English with Emma. Channels like that often have specific IELTS listening lessons, tips, practice exercises, worth exploring.
Fantastic range of resources there. Okay, as we start to wrap this up, any final key strategies for exam day itself, when you're actually in the test?
Yes, some crucial final tips from the guide. First, get there early, stay calm. Easier said than done, I know, but being flustered doesn't help.
True.
Use that time before each section to read the questions ahead. Predicts, we talked about that. It's vital when you transfer answers to the answer sheet at the end. Double check spelling and grammar. Don't lose points carelessly. And if you miss an answer, just let it go, move on. Don't panic and lose focus on the next questions. It's better to miss one than three.
Good point. Don't get stuck.
Exactly. And finally, the biggest one maybe. Practice with full-time tests regularly. Get used to the pressure, the format, the whole experience. No surprises on test day.
This has been incredibly helpful, a really thorough breakdown. So to quickly recap the main takeaway, it really seems like mastering IELTS listening comes down to those 5 core skills we discussed.
Predictive listening, focused listening for detail, paraphrase recognition, note-taking, and concentration.
Right. Plus, building that vocabulary, especially synonyms, and just consistent targeted practice using good resources.
That's pretty much the formula, yes. Put in the work on those areas and you'll be well on your way.
And as you said right at the start, these aren't just test skills. Better listening helps everywhere.
Absolutely. It's a fundamental communication skill. Invaluable in, life generally.
So, on that note, here's a final thought for everyone listening. Next time you're in a conversation or just listening to anything, really a podcast, the news, whatever, try consciously applying just one technique from today. Maybe try predicting what comes next. Or really focus on nailing down one specific detail. Just pick one thing and notice, does it change how much you understand, how engaged you feel?
Yeah, just try it. At its heart, what is the IELTS listening test really trying to figure out about your English abilities?
Fundamentally, it's assessing your ability to understand spoken English, as it's used in a variety of real-life situations.
Okay.
This means grasping the main ideas, picking out specific details, recognizing speakers' opinions and attitudes, and also following how an argument develops.
And it's good to know that whether you're taking the academic or the general training version, the listening test format itself stays the same, right?
That's right, yeah. Both versions, same 4 sections. And it's also really important to realize that the difficulty, it tends to build as you go through.
Yeah.
Literally, section 1 will feel the most straightforward, leading up to the, let's say, more complex audio in section 4. It kind of mirrors how listening challenges might ramp up in real life.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So talking practicalities, how much time are we actually looking at for the test, and how many questions in total?
So you'll have roughly 30 minutes of actual listening time. Then crucially, you get an extra 10 minutes just for transferring your answers onto the answer sheet.
Right, that transfer time is key.
Absolutely. And in total, there are 40 questions. Nice and neat, 10 questions for each of the 4 sections.
Okay. And something I know worries a lot of people is the range of voices they might hear. It's not just one standard accent, is it?
Definitely not. No, you'll be exposed to a whole variety of native English accents. British, American, Australian, Canadian, others too. It really reflects the reality of global English.
So it tests your understanding across different ways of speaking.
Exactly. Just like you'd encounter out in the world.
Now, while you're listening, are you allowed to scribble notes? Because that feels like it'd be super helpful.
Yes, absolutely. You're definitely allowed to make notes while you listen, and honestly, it can be incredibly useful.
Okay.
Jot down keywords, names, numbers, anything that jumps out. But, and this is critical when you transfer those answers, spelling. It has to be spot on. An incorrect spelling, even if you understood it perfectly, will unfortunately be marked wrong.
Ouch. Okay, that's a really vital detail about spelling. So let's get into the structure then, these 4 sections. What can people expect in section 1?
Right, section 1, it kicks things off with a conversation, usually between 2 people, in a pretty normal, everyday social setting.
Okay, like what?
Think about booking a hotel room, maybe asking for information about a bus route, confirming details for, joining a library, that kind of thing.
Standard stuff.
Yeah, it tests your ability to understand those transactional conversations, pick out specific details, often the first hurdle when you're navigating a new place.
Right, very relatable situations. Then we move to section 2, which switches things up. It's a monologue.
That's right. Section 2, you'll hear just one person speaking, usually in a general context. An example might be, say, a short speech about local park facilities, or an introduction to a museum tour, maybe an announcement about a community event.
Okay.
It assesses your skill in following a single speaker presenting information, often to a wider audience.
Okay, one person talking to a group. Got it. How about section 3? That sounds like it might dial up the complexity a bit.
You're right, it often does. Section 3 involves a conversation again, but this time it could involve up to 4 people.
4.
And the context here is typically educational or training related. So imagine university students discussing an assignment with their professor, or maybe a group planning a project together.
Right, more academic.
Yeah, the language can become a bit more abstract, the idea is more complex, and you really need to track multiple viewpoints.
Definitely sounds like you need to keep your wits about you, tracking who's saying what. And then finally, section 4, the last one. What's that about?
Section 4 is another monologue, but this time it's on an academic subject. Think of it like a mini lecture.
Oh, okay.
This is generally seen as the most demanding section. You'll likely encounter more complex ideas, perhaps some specialized vocabulary, and a more formal academic style of speaking, like a university lecturer presenting research, perhaps.
Okay, so a real progression in difficulty across the sections. Knowing that structure definitely gives you a heads up. Now, beyond the format, the test uses lots of different types of questions. Why is it so important for listeners, for you, to really get a handle on these different formats?
Oh, it's crucial. Because each question type is actually designed to test slightly different facets of your listening comprehension. Knowing what kind of question is coming up lets you adjust your strategy, focus on specific kinds of information, and ultimately avoid those common slip-ups. It's like knowing the different plays in a game gives you a real advantage.
That makes total sense. So let's dive into those specifics then. Let's look at these question types and, crucially, the strategies you can use for each one. First up, a familiar one. Multiple choice questions. What do they look like?
Okay, multiple choice. Usually, you get a question or maybe an incomplete sentence followed by 3 options, A, B, and C. Sometimes maybe more, but usually 3. Your job is simply to listen and choose the option that best answers that question or completes the statement based on the audio. They can test all sorts of things, specific details, facts, opinions, main ideas, even implications.
Can you give us a quick example?
Sure. A classic one might be, what time is the meeting scheduled to begin? A, 10:30 a.m. B, 10:30 a.m. C, 11 a.m. You listen, and maybe the speaker says something like, we'll start at 10:30 sharp. So you'd choose B.
Okay, seems straightforward enough on the surface, but what are the key strategies here? Because I sense there are traps.
Oh, definitely traps. The most vital thing is to read the question and all the options very carefully before the audio starts. Underline keywords in both the question stem and the options.
Okay.
This helps you focus your listening. Then, while listening, be super aware of distractors. Speakers might mention an incorrect option before settling on the right one.
The classic bait and switch.
Exactly. They might say, we were thinking 10 o'clock, but actually, let's make it 10:30. You have to listen for that final decision. Don't just grab the first time you hear.
Right, listen for corrections.
Yeah, speakers correct themselves all the time in real life, and the test reflects that. Also, watch out for words that sound similar but mean different things. Context is everything. Think affect versus effect, or accept versus accept.
Good point. Okay, moving on. Another common type, matching questions. How do those work?
Matching questions.
Okay.
You usually see 2 lists. One list has items, maybe speakers' names, places on a map, types of courses. The other list has options, perhaps opinions, features, activities associated with those items.
Okay.
Your task is to draw a line, basically connecting the items in the first list to the correct options in the second list, based on what you hear. These test your ability to catch details, but also, crucially, to see the relationships between different bits of information.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Imagine a list of speakers, Sarah, Tom, Maria, and then a list of opinions about, say, a new library system. A, loves it. B, thinks it needs improvement. C, hasn't used it yet. You listen to Sarah, Tom, and Maria talking, and you match each person to the opinion that reflects what they say. The trick is they probably won't use those exact words like loves it. They might say, it's fantastic, or I'm really impressed.
So lots of paraphrasing involved.
Exactly. You need to be ready for synonyms and different ways of saying the same thing. Strategy-wise, preview both lists, underline key ideas, be ready for that paraphrasing, and stay focused because speakers might compare opinions or even slightly change their minds during the conversation. You need to track each person's view.
Right, follow each thread. Okay, now let's talk visuals. Plan, map, and diagram labeling. What's the setup for those?
Yes, the visual ones. You get a picture, could be a floor plan, a street map, maybe a diagram showing how something works.
Okay.
And you have to listen to someone describing it and then label specific parts on that visual. You might write words directly from the recording or maybe choose letters from a list of options.
And what skills are really being tested here? It feels like more than just vocabulary.
Oh, absolutely. It's testing your ability to follow directions, turn left, go past the library. It's opposite the main entrance. It tests spatial awareness, understanding prepositions of place, and basically translating spoken directions into a visual map in your head.
Can you walk us through a mini example?
Okay, imagine a simple map of a town center. You hear, start at the post office, go straight down High Street, past the bakery on your left, the bookstore is the next building on your left, just opposite the park. You'd then need to find the post office on the map and label the bookstore in the correct location based on those directions.
Right, you really have to visualize it as you listen.
Yeah.
What are some solid strategies for these?
Definitely study the visual before the audio starts. Get your bearings. Look for any existing labels. The post office is my example. Look for orientation markers like a compass arrow or you are here points. And really practice listening to and understanding directional language. Maybe listen to tourist audio guides online or follow directions on Google Maps audibly.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Are there common pitfalls with these visual questions, things people mess up often?
Yes, definitely. A big one is not reading the instructions carefully about how to label. Do you write a word? A letter? Is there a word limit? Always check.
The word limit again.
Yep. Another issue is misinterpreting relative positions next to might not mean directly touching. And yeah, if the description is long, it's easy to get lost. Try to stay calm. Use existing labels as anchors to reorient yourself if you drift off.
Good advice. Stay anchored. Okay, let's move to another set of questions that involve filling in gaps. Form, note, table, flowchart, and summary completion. Quite a mouthful, but they seem related.
They are, yeah. They all involve some kind of structured text with missing information. Could be a form, lecture notes, a table comparing things, a flowchart showing steps, or a summary paragraph.
Right.
Your job is to listen and fill in those blanks using the exact words or numbers you hear in the recording. It tests your ability to pull out key facts and see how they fit into that structure.
And what specific listening skills are key here?
Primarily identifying specific details, names, dates, numbers, key nouns, or verbs. Also, understanding paraphrasing, because the sentence structure around the gap might be different from what the speaker says, and comprehending how information is organized sequentially in a flowchart, categorically in a table, etc.
Could you give an example, maybe for a summary completion?
Sure. You might see, the workshop focused on improving time management skills. Key strategies discussed included tasks and avoiding stills. You listen, and the speaker might say something like essential techniques like prioritizing your tasks effectively and learning how to steer clear of common distractions. So you'd fill in prioritizing and distractions, or maybe prioritizing depending on UCAS spelling focus, which IELTS usually accepts either of.
Gotcha. Okay, crucial strategies for all these gap fill types.
Number 1, read the instructions. Especially the word limit, no more than 2 words and/or a number is very common.
Right. Always the word limit.
Always. Before listening, try to predict what kind of word is missing. Is it a noun, a date, a number, a verb? This primes your brain. While listening, pay attention to stress and intonation. Speakers often emphasize the key information that fills the gaps, and make sure your answer fits grammatically into the sentence or note.
And vocabulary, any specific areas that pop up a lot here?
In the more academic sections 3 and 4, yeah. You might get vocabulary related to processes, research, environment, business. Words like implement, regulate, factor, criteria, hypothesis, consequence. Being familiar with common academic-ish words helps.
Good to know. Okay, another gap fill variant, sentence completion. How's that different?
It's similar, but instead of notes or a table, you're given complete sentences with a word or short phrase missing. You listen and complete the sentence using words from the audio. The focus is slightly more on the grammatical structure of the sentence itself.
But skills are tested.
Listening for specific facts, figures, names, ideas, just like other gap fills, but also understanding sentence structure, how the missing piece fits grammatically and makes sense in the whole sentence.
Can we have an example?
Okay, maybe. The company decided to gut its marketing strategy due to poor sales figures. You listen, and speaker says, given the downturn in sales, the board agreed to completely overhaul the marketing strategy. So you'd write overhaul.
Right. Strategies for this one.
Again, predict the type of missing word. Be alert for synonyms and paraphrasing overhaul instead of maybe change or revise. And critically, check the grammar. Does your answer fit the sentence? Tense, singular, plural, articles, they all need to match. If it doesn't sound right grammatically, it's probably wrong.
That grammar check seems like a recurring theme and a really useful one. Okay, last question type, short answer questions. sound simple.
They sound it, yeah. They are direct questions, often starting with what, where, when, who, why, how many. You need to write a short answer, usually just a few words or maybe a number based on the audio.
What skills are they targeting?
Precise information retrieval. Understanding the question word is key. Are you listening for a place, a time, a reason, a number?
Quick example.
Sure. Question. How many days will the festival last? Answer. The audio might say, the festival runs for a full week. So you'd need to write 7 days, or maybe just 7 days, depending on the instructions.
Okay. Strategies.
Scan the question first. What exactly is it asking for? Note that answers are often factual. Numbers, places, names, times. And you guessed it, double check the spelling when you transfer.
Spelling, spelling, spelling. Got it. Okay, that's a fantastic tour of the question types. Now, let's circle back to something that causes anxiety. Those different accents. British, American, Australian, etc. What are your top practical tips for getting comfortable with this variety?
Yeah, it's a common concern. The absolute best way is just active, varied exposure. Don't just stick to one type of English audio. Watch movies and TV shows from the UK, the US, Australia. Use subtitles at first if it connects the sounds to the words.
Good idea.
Dive into YouTube, TED Talks, podcasts. There's so much out there with speakers from everywhere. Make a conscious effort to listen to accents you find trickier. The more you hear them, the less strange they'll sound.
Actively train the ear. Makes sense. Are there specific vocabulary differences people should maybe look out for, like common word variations?
Oh yeah, definitely. Some classics. British English lift is American elevator, flat is apartment. British queue versus American line.
Right.
Australian English has some unique ones too, like maybe Barbie for barbecue or Arvo for afternoon. Sometimes it's pronunciation, sometimes different words entirely. A great tip is to keep maybe an accent journal.
Oh, tell me more.
Just a little notebook where you jot down any new words or phrases you hear that seem tied to a specific accent. Write down what you think it means, maybe the context. It makes you actively notice these things.
That's a brilliant practical idea, an accent journal. Okay, so exposure is key, but just listening passively isn't the whole story for prep, is it? What are some really effective practice techniques to actively build those listening skills for the test?
Right, active practice is crucial. One really powerful technique is shadowing.
Shadow.
Yeah. You listen to a short phrase or sentence, pause the audio, and immediately try to repeat it exactly as you heard it. Copy the rhythm, the stress, the intonation. It really tunes your ear and your own pronunciation.
Okay, sounds intensive.
It can be, but it's effective. Another one is predictive listening, which we touched on with gap fills. Before you listen, look at the questions and try to guess what kind of information or answer you're likely to hear. It gets your brain focused. And of course, use official IELTS practice materials. Gap fill exercises, full practice tests, there's no substitute for working with the real format.
Right.
And a tough but vital one. Train yourself with the one-time listening rule. Practice listening to sections without pausing or replaying, just like the real test. It forces concentration.
Ooh, that's harsh but necessary, I suppose. Simulates the pressure. Now, we mentioned vocabulary with accents and academic words. Any other vocabulary areas that are particularly important for the listening test?
Yes, definitely phrasal verbs and idioms, because the test uses natural spoken English, especially in sections 1 and 3. You'll hear these all the time.
Okay, examples.
Things like put off, meaning postpone the meeting was put off, or look into, meaning investigate, we'll look into the problem. Come up with, meaning create an idea. She came up with a great plan.
Right.
Take over, meaning assume control. He took over the project. Run out of, meaning have no more. We ran out of time. Understanding these is key because the meaning often isn't obvious from the individual words.
They're everywhere in spoken English, aren't they?
They really are. So actively learning common ones is a huge advantage. Also, some slightly more advanced, maybe formal vocabulary can appear, especially later on.
Like what?
Words like allocate, to distribute funds or resources. Sustainability, a very common topic now. Understanding terms like these helps you follow the more complex discussions in Section 4 particularly.
Definitely good to have those in your toolkit. Now, even with great prep, people can still fall into common traps on test day. What are some of the sneakiest ones, and how do you sidestep them?
Okay, traps. Number 1 is definitely distractors, which we mentioned with multiple choice. The speaker says one thing, then corrects it, or changes their mind.
Right, the wait, no, actually moment.
Exactly. Let's meet at 2 p.m. Oh, hang on. 3 p.m. is better. The answer is 3 p.m. You have to listen for the final confirmed piece of information.
Okay, what else?
Similar sounding words. This catches so many people. 15 versus 50, sail versus sail, effect versus effect, quiet versus quite. You must listen to the context to understand the meaning. Don't just react to a familiar sound.
Context is king.
It really is. And finally, try not to overthink. If you heard something clearly, trust your ears. Don't start second guessing or making complex assumptions based on what you think should be the answer. Stick to what was actually said.
Trust your ears. Avoid the distractors. Listen for context. Got us. Do our sources give any quick insights from, say, a sample practice test that show these traps in action?
Yeah, there's a good example, a conversation between a student and an advisor about course registration. The advisor first says the deadline is July 15th, but then immediately says, oh, apologies, I meant July 18th. Classic distractor. 18th is the answer. Later, the student asks how many electives are needed. The advisor clearly states you have to select 2 electives. Listening for that specific number is key for maybe a short answer or gap fill.
Right.
And there's a bit about an orientation location where the advisor says it's in the main auditorium, that's building A this year, not building B like last time. So clarifying informations, correcting potential assumptions, you need to catch that specific detail.
That really brings it to life, seeing how those distractors and clarifications actually sound in context. Okay, as we start to wrap up this deep dive, what's your final word, your main piece of encouragement for everyone gearing up for this test?
Look, remember the IELTS listening test isn't just about passively hearing English. It's about actively understanding it, often under pressure, within a specific format. Getting a good score really comes down to a mix of things. Knowing the strategies, practicing consistently and smartly, and being honest with yourself about where you need to improve. There's that saying, listening is not hearing, it's understanding.
I like that.
Yeah, try to bring that mindset to your practice, but also just to your everyday English use. Train with purpose, practice often, and really learn from your mistakes. They're golden opportunities, honestly.
That's fantastic advice. Really practical and encouraging. So just to quickly recap what we've dug into today.
Yeah.
We've looked at the overall format of the IELTS listening test, the different question types you'll face, strategies for each, handling accents, practice techniques, key vocabulary like phrasal verbs, and those common traps to watch out for.
Covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, and getting your head around all these pieces is genuinely a huge step towards hitting that score you need, which in turn helps you reach whatever goal you're aiming for: study, work, immigration.
Absolutely. It really can open doors.
It really can. So maybe a final thought for you, our listeners, to chew on.
Okay.
Consider how actively you really listen in your day-to-day conversations. Are there maybe some techniques we talked about today, things like focusing on keywords, predicting, listening for signposting, that could actually boost not just your IELTS score, but maybe your general listening skills and how well you connect with people every day? Something to think about. 4 sections in the listening test.
Yep. Each with its own kind of challenge.
First, there's a conversation in a social context.
Right.
Then a monologue, also social. Then things get academic, an academic discussion.
Usually a few speakers there.
And finally, an academic monologue. A lecture, basically.
That's the structure, and 10 questions for each section.
So 40 questions total. And the listening part itself is about 30 minutes.
Around that, yes. And the crucial thing, you only hear it once. No replays.
That's the killer part for many, I think. Oh, and for the paper test, you get that extra 10 minutes at the end, right, to transfer answers.
Correct. 10 minutes to carefully copy everything over. Important not to rush that.
Good point. And the accents.
Yeah.
We should mention those. It's not just one type of English.
No, definitely not. You'll hear British, American, Australian, New Zealander, Canadian. Quite a mix.
So getting used to different accents is, well, pretty vital preparation.
It really is. Exposure helps a lot.
Okay, before we break down each section, are there some, general strategies that work across the board?
Yeah, there are a few key things. First, try to predict the type of answer you're listening for. Is it a name, a number, a date?
Kind of priming your brain, yeah.
Exactly. And scanning the questions beforehand, underlining keywords, that's huge. It focuses your listening.
Okay, what else?
Multitasking. You're reading the questions, listening to the audio, and writing answers, often pretty much simultaneously.
That sounds intense.
It takes practice. And related to that, listening for synonyms and paraphrasing. They almost never use the exact words from the question in the audio.
Ah, so you need to understand the meaning, not just listen for matching words.
Precisely. And finally, maybe the hardest one. Stay calm if you miss something.
Easier said than done.
True. But really, don't dwell on it. Just refocus on the next question. Each one's a fresh start, you know?
Good advice. Okay, let's dive into section 1 then. The conversation in a social context. What's typical here?
So this is usually two people talking in an everyday situation. Think booking a hotel room, signing up for a gym class, making travel arrangements.
Right, those practical day-to-day things. What trips people up most often in this section?
Specific details, mostly. Missing numbers like phone numbers, addresses, dates, or mishearing words that sound similar.
13 or 30, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And also, sometimes there's extra information thrown in that isn't actually needed for the answer. That can be distracting.
Okay, so how do we combat that? What are the targeted strategies for section 1?
Well, first, really train your ear for those specific details we mentioned. Names, numbers, times, addresses.
Practice spelling names out loud, maybe. And recognizing address formats.
That can genuinely help, yes. Getting familiar with how numbers sound, how names are spelled.
Makes sense. What else?
Try to grasp the main purpose of the conversation right at the start. What are they trying to achieve?
Like, is it a booking, an inquiry, a complaint?
Exactly. If you know it's, say, someone booking a double room from August 12th, like in that source example.
Then you can anticipate hearing things like cost, maybe the person's name, contact details.
Precisely. It sets the context. And watch out for corrections.
Yeah, people changing their minds or correcting a slip of the tongue.
Yes. Someone might give a phone number, then say, oh, sorry, that last digit should be, you need the corrected version, like that example, 0415-397. No, wait, 415-379-682. You need the second one.
Got it. Easy to write down the first thing you hear if you're not careful.
Very easy. And definitely practice distinguishing similar sounding numbers, 1330, 1440, and so on. Stress patterns are key there.
Right, 13 versus 30.
You got it. And be comfortable with the alphabet for spelling.
Okay, so if we had a practice scenario, say someone booking a flight, what would we be listening for?
You'd be zeroing in on the passenger's name, the flight date, departure time, destination, maybe a contact number, those concrete bits of information.
Crystal clear. Right, let's move to section 2, the monologue in a social context. One speaker this time.
Yep, just one person giving information, often in a social setting, but it's a monologue.
Like a tour guide.
Mm-hmm.
Or someone explaining a schedule.
Exactly. Or maybe describing a museum layout, talking about different exhibits.
What are the big challenges here? Losing focus, maybe? It's longer?
That's a big one, yeah. Concentration fatigue. Also, keeping track of details if they're describing a place or a sequence of events. It can get confusing.
So how do we stay focused and follow the thread?
Pay attention to the structure. Speakers usually use signal words.
Like signposts.
Kind of. Words like, firstly, next, then after that, finally. They guide you through the talk. Following those helps you keep track of where you are.
Okay, listening for the structure. What else?
If there's a map or diagram with the questions, use it actively.
Don't just glance at it.
No, really engage with it. Listen for spatial language opposite, beside, next to, at the end of the corridor. Try to visualize what the speaker is describing on the map.
Right, connect the audio to the visual.
Definitely. And focus on the key nouns and adjectives. The words describing the objects, places, times, they're often crucial for the answers.
Okay, so a practice task might be, say, listening to a description of a museum layout.
Yeah, and you might have to label a map of the museum based on the description, matching the audio to the locations on the plan.
Got it. Now, section 3, the academic discussion. This sounds trickier with multiple speakers.
It can be, typically 2 to 4 people talking in an academic setting.
Like a tutorial, students and a tutor.
Often, yeah. Or maybe students discussing a group project or assignment.
And the challenges. Keeping track of who's saying what, I imagine.
That's a major one. Distinguishing the speakers. Also, following the flow of the discussion, how ideas develop, where they agree or disagree.
And identifying opinions versus facts.
Exactly. Recognizing suggestions, opinions, points of agreement, disagreement, or even uncertainty.
Okay, how do we manage that? How do we track who's who and what they think?
Listen for voice, quality tone, titch. Do they sound confident, tentative? Also, the language they use.
So student A might suggest something and student B might sound doubtful.
Right, like, maybe we should look into X, and the other replies, I'm not so sure about that, because learning to pick up on those cues is key.
So tuning into the subtleties.
Yes, and focus specifically on agreement-disagreement language. And of course, academic vocabulary comes into play here more strongly.
Words like hypothesis, methodology, data analysis.
Those kinds of terms. Building that specific vocabulary is really helpful for this section.
So a typical practice task could be students planning a presentation.
Yeah, that's common. Questions might focus on who suggested what they finally agreed on, what decisions were made about content or structure.
Following the decision-making process within the group. Okay, on to the final boss. Section 4, the academic monologue.
The final stretch. Yes, one speaker again, but this time it's a formal academic talk or lecture.
And why is this often seen as the toughest? Just fatigue by this point.
The fatigue is definitely part of it, but also the language is often more complex, longer sentences, more abstract concepts, and potentially quite a bit of academic jargon.
Right. Demands sustained concentration. So strategies.
Understanding the typical lecture structure helps. Introduction, main points with examples, conclusion.
Okay.
And use the headings in the question booklet if they're there. They often outline the lecture structure and can act as a guide.
Like a roadmap for your listening.
Exactly. And note-taking becomes absolutely essential here.
Not writing everything down, though.
Definitely not. Develop shorthand. Use symbols, abbreviations, whatever works for you to capture key ideas, examples, and main points quickly. Of increase, God for government, and for environment, things like that.
Speed and efficiency in note-taking.
Crucial. And remember the point about paraphrasing. You'll almost never hear the exact words from the question. Listen for the idea expressed differently.
Synonyms, rephrase concepts. Got it. Practice scenario here. Maybe a lecture on climate change effects.
Yeah, something like that. And the questions might be sentence completion, maybe summarizing a key point, filling in notes based on the lecture.
Testing your understanding of the core content and details of a formal talk. Okay, that covers the sections well. What about vocabulary building in general? Any key areas?
Well, across the board. Numbers, dates, common names, British and international ones. Directions, definitely.
And then academic terms for sections 3 and 4.
Yes. Plus, everyday objects and actions for sections 1 and 2. It's quite broad.
Best way to build it? Just read a dictionary.
Maybe not. Best way is probably from practice tests. Keep a list of words you miss or don't know, look them up, review them, learn them in context.
Makes sense. Okay, any more advanced tips for people really pushing for those top bands?
Yeah, a few things. Try practicing with audio played faster. Maybe 1.25x speed.
Ooh, that sounds challenging.
It is, but it trains your brain to process faster. Also, simulate test conditions rigidly. No pausing, no repeating.
Mimic the real thing.
Exactly. Some people find shadow listening helpful, repeating what you hear almost immediately. Helps with processing speed and even pronunciation.
Interesting technique.
And definitely use authentic materials. TED Talks, BBC News, university lectures online, podcasts. Get exposed to real English in different contexts and accents.
Immerse yourself.
That's the idea. And finally, self-evaluation. After practice, don't just check the score. Figure out why you made mistakes. Mishearing, distraction, misunderstanding.
Analyzing errors to improve. Very important. Now, we had that quick example, didn't we? Tom and Sarah discussing an environmental report.
Right. Just a snippet. Tom asks about the report. Sarah suggests dividing it into 3 sections. Pollution, energy use, wildlife effects.
And Tom volunteers for one.
Yep, he takes the energy use section, and they agree to swap drafts on Friday.
So typical questions from that could be, what's the report about? Environmental impact. How many sections? 3. Which section is Tom doing? Energy use.
Exactly. It shows how you need to pick out the topic, decisions, specific details like who does what from a short conversation.
That's a neat little illustration.
Yeah.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, what's the main takeaway for listeners preparing for the IELTS listening?
I think the biggest thing is realizing it's not just about your general English level. It's about strategy, focused practice, and building confidence with the specific test format and techniques.
Yeah, it requires a specific kind of preparation, understanding each section, using the right strategies methodically.
Absolutely. Practice consistently, apply these techniques, and analyze your performance.
So maybe a final thought for listeners. As they go forward, perhaps they should think about which of these strategies feels like their biggest hurdle.
That's a great point. Identify your potential weak spot. Is it tracking multiple speakers? Is it dealing with academic vocabulary? Is it catching specific numbers?
And then tailor their practice to really strengthen that specific area.
Precisely. And keep listening to lots of different authentic English. That broad exposure underpins everything.
How to approach the IELTS speaking test with, well, confidence. We've pulled together a bunch of practice conversations and key info, and our goal, our mission, if you like, is to really pull out the most valuable strategies and insights to help you succeed. Think of it as a shortcut to feeling properly ready for this bit of the exam.
Yeah, we're aiming to equip listeners not just with, the facts about the format, but with practical ways to actually excel within it.
Precisely. And to give a clear picture, we're going to explore all three parts. Part 1, that initial introduction and interview. Part 2, the long-term, the one where you speak on a topic for a bit.
Right.
And Part 3, the follow-up discussion, which kind of goes deeper into those themes. So let's get right into Part 1, the introduction and interview.
Okay.
This is where you first meet the examiner, introduce yourself, and then answer questions on familiar everyday stuff, things like your work, studies, hobbies, your general routine. It seems like it's designed to ease you in.
That's exactly right. Part 1 is about showing you can communicate basic personal info clearly. It starts testing things like fluency and coherence right away, but gently.
And we've got a practice conversation here focusing on home and hometown. So let's imagine how this might start. The examiner asks, "Where is your hometown?"
Okay.
And the candidate replies, "Brighton, a small coastal city in the south of England, known for its vibrant art scene, beautiful beach, and historic pier." Straight off those words, coastal and vibrant, they add something, don't they?
They really do. And notice how naturally they're integrated. Coastal, okay, it tells you where it is on the coast. Simple. But vibrant, that suggests energy, life.
Yeah, a lively atmosphere.
Exactly. That kind of descriptive language, even right at the start, begins to show off your vocabulary range, your lexical resource.
Then the examiner follows up, "What do you like about your hometown?" The candidate says, "I love how peaceful and culturally rich it is. Despite being relatively small, Brighton offers a variety of cultural events, art exhibitions, and food festivals year-round." Culturally rich. And year-round, they feel a bit more advanced.
They are, yeah. Culturally rich implies more than just there are things to do. It suggests depth arts, heritage, activities.
Right.
And year-round is useful because it shows these things aren't just seasonal, they happen consistently. Using phrases like this definitely contributes to showing a broader vocabulary.
Okay, next up. Has your hometown changed much over the years? And the candidate goes, "Yes, it has changed significantly. Over the past decade, there's been a noticeable increase in tourism, which has led to economic growth, but also more crowded public spaces." Here, noticeable increase and economic growth, those seem like quite effective ways to talk about change.
Absolutely. Noticeable increase. It tells you the change isn't small, it's easy to see, you observe it. And economic growth is a specific term, isn't it, for the increase in value of goods and services. Using terms like that shows precision.
What strikes me about these Part 1 questions is, well, they seem simple on the surface, but you can see even here, there are chances to expand a bit, use more descriptive words. It's not just about a one-word answer, is it?
No, you nailed it. Even for, where's your hometown? Just adding a short phrase like a small coastal city known for its vibrant art scene elevates it. It shows you can elaborate naturally, which taps into fluency and coherence.
Makes perfect sense. Okay, right. Let's move on then. Part 2, the long turn. This feels like a bigger jump in what they expect.
It is, yeah. Part 2 really tests your ability to speak, at length on a specific topic. You get a cue card, it has the topic and some bullet points to guide your talk. You get 1 minute to prep, just jot down notes, and then you need to speak continuously for 1 to 2 minutes. Afterwards, the examiner might ask a quick follow-up question or two. This part heavily assesses your fluency, coherence, and how well you address the actual task.
Right, got it. We've got a couple of examples. First cue card. Describe a person who has influenced you to speak English fluently.
Yeah.
And the prompts are who this person is, how you know them, what they did to help, and explain why they influenced you.
Yeah.
So you've got to kind of structure a mini story there in that prep minute.
Exactly. And the model answer we have talks about a Mr. Thompson, a high school English lit teacher. The candidate describes his, get this, contagious passion for the subject.
Ooh, I like that phrase.
Yeah. It immediately makes him sound engaging, doesn't it? They mention he encouraged joining debates, drama clubs, practical speaking practiced right there. And he gave constructive feedback, which is so important for actually getting better, plus some memorable advice. Language is power. Learn it well, and it will open doors for you.
Contagious passion. Yeah, that's a brilliant way to put it. Someone whose enthusiasm just rubs off on you. And constructive feedback, that's key too, isn't it? Not just criticism, but helpful advice.
Precisely. Contagious passion conveys that enthusiasm that spreads. And constructive feedback, it's specific, helpful advice aimed at improvement. When you're prepping your Part 2, thinking about using vivid language like that can really make your description more, engaging.
Okay, second cue card example. Describe a time when you helped someone learn English. The prompts, who it was, why they needed help, what you did, and how you felt about it. This feels like a different kind of story, focusing on your actions and the result.
Yes, it's about showing you can recount an experience clearly and maybe reflect on it a bit. The model answer discusses helping a younger cousin, Sarah, get ready for her IELTS.
Relevant.
Yeah.
Very.
The candidate mentions Sarah struggled with speaking fluency and pronunciation. They describe doing mock interviews, recording them, reviewing them together, which is a really smart, practical approach.
Yeah, that's good.
They also use vocabulary games, podcasts. And the story ends with Sarah getting a band 7.5, which gave the candidate immense satisfaction.
Mock interview. Yeah, that's such a great way to simulate the real thing, isn't it? Takes the pressure off, but still lets you practice. And immense satisfaction. Yeah, you can really feel the positive emotion in that phrase.
Absolutely. A mock interview, it mimics the real exam format, helps build confidence, find weaknesses, in a safe space. Pronunciation, obviously, just how you say words.
Right.
And immense satisfaction. It's that really deep feeling of fulfillment you get from a big achievement, especially if you helped make it happen. When you're doing part 2, remember to talk not just about what happened, but maybe touch on your feelings, the impact it had.
So, part 2. It seems like it's about more than just answering the points. It's about structuring a coherent sort of mini presentation using good descriptive words and keeping it going smoothly for that 1 to 2 minutes.
Exactly right. It tests your ability to organize thoughts logically, speak fluently for a decent stretch, cover all the points on the card, and show off a good range of vocabulary and grammar while you're doing it. Using linking words helps a lot with the coherence part.
Okay, good point. Right then, let's tackle part 3, the discussion. Now, this sounds like where things get a bit more abstract, analytical, moving beyond just your own experiences.
That's precisely it. Part 3 digs into more in-depth questions, but they're related to the topic you just talked about in part 2. It's about exploring broader themes, expressing opinions, justifying your views. This part really assesses your ability to handle a more complex discussion and use, more sophisticated language.
Okay. We've got a practice chat here on language learning and communication, which follows on nicely from those part 2 examples about learning and teaching English. The examiner starts with, why do some people find it easier to learn languages than others?
Classic question.
Yeah. And the candidate mentions things like natural aptitude, an immersive environment, motivation, exposure, and previous experience. Aptitude and immersive environment, those feel like really key terms in language learning discussion.
They certainly are. Aptitude, that's like a natural talent or knack for something. Some people just seem to pick up languages more easily.
Yeah.
And an immersive environment, that's being completely surrounded by the language, hearing it, using it constantly. That kind of total exposure can really speed things up. Notice how the candidate gives several factors showing they've thought about it from different angles.
Good point. Okay, next question. Do you think technology has made language learning easier? The candidate gives a pretty positive answer here, highlighting instant access to loads of resources apps, online tutors, games, YouTube, language exchange sites, all offering authentic content and chances for real-time practice. They call these invaluable.
And that reflects reality, doesn't it? Authentic content means real stuff made by native speakers, for native speakers, films, music, articles. It's invaluable, like they said.
Extremely useful, yeah.
Because it shows you how the language is actually used with all its nuances and cultural bits. And invaluable just hammers home how incredibly useful these tools are. Providing specific examples, like the different types of tech, strengthens the answer too.
Definitely. Okay, last one from this section. Is it more important to focus on speaking or writing skills? The candidate has a balanced view, saying, well, it depends on your goals. Writing might be crucial for uni, say.
Academic stuff.
While speaking is essential for daily life, work. Ideally, they say, you should develop both concurrently.
That's a really thoughtful, nuanced response. Crucial stresses just how vital something is in a specific situation.
Right.
And concurrently means at the same time. The candidate cleverly avoids taking an extreme stance and acknowledges different learners have different needs. That shows higher level thinking.
So part 3 is really about showing you can think critically about these broader language issues, express more complex ideas, and use more precise, maybe slightly more formal vocabulary to back up your arguments.
Exactly. It moves beyond just you and your cousin Sarah, for example, and requires you to engage with more abstract concepts and give reasoned explanations.
Got it. Now, the material we're looking at also includes some really useful expert tips and practice ideas. It mentions a practice question bank
Ah, yes.
organized by themes like work and studies, travel, hobbies, technology. This seems like a fantastic way to target your practice, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Having a structured bank like that is incredibly helpful. If, say, talking about hobbies is a weak spot, you can focus right there.
Yeah, like under work and studies, you might get questions like, what are your responsibilities at work? Or why did you pick that subject to study?
It lets you build vocabulary and just get comfortable with topics that are very likely to pop up in part 1 and could even seed into part 2 sometimes. It's about being prepared.
And then there are these IELTS speaking tips for advanced learners. Things like expand your answers, give reasons examples, use linking phrases to connect ideas smoothly, practice paraphrasing, saying things in different ways to show your vocab range, record yourself, the dreaded recording,
Ah, yes, but so useful.
to spot areas needing work. And try to think in English, not translate in your head. These all sound like really practical ways to push beyond just basic chat.
They are absolutely key for showing higher proficiency. Expanding shows depth. Linking words improve coherence. Paraphrasing proves vocabulary. Recording gives you honest feedback. And thinking in English boosts fluency, reduces hesitation. It's all good stuff.
Then there's a list of advanced vocabulary. Words like fluency, speaking smoothly and easily, articulate, expressing ideas clearly, spontaneous speaking without planning everything out first, intonation, the rise and fall, the melody of your voice, and coherent, logical, easy to follow. Just dropping a few of these in naturally could really make a difference, I imagine.
It really could. Using words like that correctly shows a greater command of English. So instead of just she speaks well, you could say her fluency is impressive.
Right.
Or instead of his ideas were clear, maybe he was very articulate in his presentation. It's about choosing language that's more precise, more sophisticated.
And finally, there is a suggested daily practice routine. And it seems quite doable, actually. Just 30 minutes a day, watch a short English video, review a cue card, maybe record yourself talking about it, read something aloud, learn, and try to use some new words. Consistency seems to be the main message there.
It really is. Regular, focused practice, even short bursts, beats cramming every time. That routine covers different skills: listening, speaking structure, pronunciation, vocab. It's nicely well-rounded.
So if we try and tie all this together,
Yeah.
it really looks like doing well in the IELTS speaking section comes down to a mix of things. Clear, structured communication, backing up what you say with details or examples, and showing you have a decent range of vocabulary and grammar. It's not just knowing English, is it? It's using it effectively in that specific conversational, slightly pressured situation.
That's a perfect summary. It's about being an active, engaged communicator, not just someone passively answering questions.
And the way to get there seems to be just consistent practice. Whether that's trying to have natural chats when you can, working through those part 2 cue cards against the flock, or taking that slightly painful but really vital step of recording yourself and listening back honestly.
Precisely. Each of those methods tackles different bits of the test and builds up your overall skill and confidence.
So for everyone listening, as you're prepping for the IELTS speaking test, maybe just take a moment to think. Which of those 3 parts, 1, 2, or 3, feels like the biggest challenge for you right now? Perhaps that's where you could aim your first practice efforts.
Good idea.
And maybe pick out 1 or 2 of those advanced words or speaking tips we mentioned that kind of stuck with you. How could you consciously try and weave those into your daily practice routine starting, tomorrow? That focused, consistent effort. That's really what's going to make the difference and help you walk into that test feeling more prepared and confident.